So I was born in South Carolina, and when I was born, the doctor held me up and said, "Congratulations, it's a girl." We all make mistakes. My mother's first piece of advice was, well, if you're going to be a straight man, you'll need to learn to talk about sports. So go to the store and buy a Red Sox shirt, a Patriot shirt, a Celtic shirt, and a Bruin shirt. It doesn't matter whose name is on the back.
For folks who are not embracing diversity before, for them it's like, oh, it's just a cause of trouble. It prolongs the process. We've been doing this before. It's tried and tested. Why do we need to change it? What is the value of having a supplier diversity manager?
I was told by someone a few years ago that as a diversity professional, I'm a paid irritant, which I embrace that.
Why is it important for a workplace to be LGBTQ plus inclusive?
Find a mentor and find a champion. A mentor will speak with you, a champion will speak for you.
Welcome to Meaningful Marketing, Mentoring, Mattering with me, Joseph Alcantara. Together, we'll uncover the power of purpose, experience mentorship magic, unpack ways to make a difference, and find transformative journeys as a community. Welcome to another episode of Meaningful Marketing, Mentoring, Mattering with me, Joseph Alcantara. And today we have a very special guest and a very special topic to talk about. It's all about why an LGBTQ plus inclusive workplace really matters. And to talk about it is none other than my very special friend from the same nonprofit that I also volunteer for. His name is Trevor Boylston. He has 17 years of experience in the biotech and medical device procurement and currently serves as the Supplier Diversity Manager for Boston Scientific. In his role, Trevor focuses on being a trusted advisor to both his internal stakeholders and the small and diverse business community. He was recognized for his work, receiving the 2023 Top 25 Diversity Change Leader from Diversity Plus magazine, the 2023 Corporate Support Award from NVBDC, and the 2023 Boston Scientific Workplace Culture Impact Award. Trevor is a transgender man who regularly volunteers with LGBTQ plus organizations in his local community. He enjoys the sport of curling and spending time with his wife and his very cute daughter. Please welcome to the podcast, my friend, Trevor Boylston. Hi, Trevor.
Oh. Hi, Joseph. Thank you for that introduction. That was a great introduction. I'm sure some people are already wondering what NVBDC stands for, so we'll have to talk about that as we go.
Yes, and I'm sure for those people who are not based here in New England, probably what the sport of curling is all about. Surprised if people do not know as well. So let's start from the very beginning, Trevor. Like, can you tell us your meaningful life story? A quick summary of, your personal background and to where you are today, based on however it is that you would want to share your story.
Sure. When I have the pleasure of sharing my story at libraries, I like to start with once upon a time, and in a land far, far away. So I was born in South Carolina, and when I was born, the doctor held me up and said, "Congratulations, it's a girl." We all make mistakes. So I grew up here in Massachusetts, though, after my family relocated from South Carolina. And I was probably about 7 years old when I realized that I knew I was a boy, but no one else around me knew that. No one else around me could realize that. And growing up at the time, it was the early 80s. It was really a time before cell phones, before the internet, before a way to connect outside of the small neighborhood where I lived. There were no positive representations of trans people in the media, certainly not on television, certainly not anything my parents would allow me to watch at that age. So I had the sense of who I was, but I had no language to explain it, and no positive role model to look up and say, yes, I am like that person. And so I kind of grew up that kid that didn't have a lot of friends, that did their homework early, and really just was pretty isolated. I remember very distinctly feeling gender dysphoria as a physical sensation the first time when I was about 13. I was actually on my 13th birthday. My mother took me to get a haircut, and the stylist found out it was my birthday and decided to give me the gift of a manicure. and knowing that this was something that was very kind and very generous, and something that not all the other kids that were my age were getting this, and I couldn't reconcile with that with my body's reaction, which was nausea and dizziness and almost vertigo and anger, this anger that was coming from nowhere. And I I was really conflicted because I knew this was something that was kind and generous, but I hated every single second of it and couldn't wait to get out that door to peel the paint off my nails. And that really started some long periods of isolation in my life. It was just really the start of the downward spiral of thinking that, I probably wouldn't be on this earth for very long. Some of those first iterations of suicidal thoughts came around, and it was scary, it was isolating, and it really set the tone for my young adulthood and early career steps. I was so uncomfortable in my own skin. I couldn't settle into anything. I couldn't complete college courses, even though I'd been the smart kid in high school. I couldn't dig down and focus in college. I hopped from job to job to job. Everything I did, I tried to do well, but I couldn't connect with anyone on a meaningful level. I couldn't connect with any career on a meaningful level. Everything was skin deep. Everything was held at arm's length. So nothing really fit. And I thought for a long time that the problems were external. If I change jobs, if I change careers, if I change relationships, then something will finally click. It really ignoring the fact that what I needed to change was my own perception of self. And really, it took exiting an abusive relationship to make that step. I can remember when that relationship ended, it ended violently. And I can remember laying on the floor thinking, well, when I have enough energy to get up, there's enough medication in the cabinet in the bathroom to take care of this problem permanently. But when I did get up the next day, I had enough energy to really realize that I could start over. But I didn't have enough energy to start over continuing to hide who I was. I needed to be able to be out and be authentic and be myself. So reconnected with my family, and I am blessed to have a wonderful mother and wonderful family who supported me on this journey. I do have to laugh. My mother's first piece of advice was, well, if you're going to be a straight man, you'll need to learn to talk about sports. So go to the store and buy a Red Sox shirt, a Patriot shirt, a Celtic shirt, and a Bruins shirt. It doesn't matter whose name is on the back. So that was that was my mother's initial advice as a trans man, and it did pay dividends. It was a great way to enter in conversation with straight men as I was learning how to interact in the world as a straight man. There was a lot of funny stories through my transition, and we can touch on some of those if you want. But it really once I was able to be myself and interact with the world authentically, it brought so much more meaning to my life and so much more positive interactions and positive connections and confidence. And I was finally able to form those relationships that I had been lacking as my younger self, and to really have those deep seated conversations. It was about a year into my transition when I realized that I hadn't thought about my gender for 3 days. And that was a huge step. It was the first time in my life I'd gone multiple days without thinking consciously about my gender. And I went from job hopping, job to job to job to job, 6 months here, 6 months there, temp assignment, joined the military, left the military, EMT, not an EMT, bike messenger, you name it, I tried it, to working for a biotech company for 8 years and really learning the craft of procurement, learning the art of negotiation through sourcing, through planning, through buying, to work with different departments within the company, to work with different vendors. And that's what led me eventually to my career at Boston Scientific, where I've been for just over 9 years now. And ultimately, being out in the workplace is what has allowed me to find supplier diversity as a career, as something that I am good at and something that is so critical now to the economic development of a company, to the economic stability of our business partners. It's really an incredible role, and I'm so lucky to have found it. And I would not have found it if I hadn't been able to be out in my workplace.
Wow. I want to ask you a lot of questions, Trevor. Wow, what an experience. I mean, I would have to say you started with Once Upon a Time, and I would have to say that you should end the story, the ongoing story, and you've lived happily ever after. I know I'm just oversimplifying it, but seeing the challenges that you've gone through but where you are today and seeing the beautiful family that you have now. I'm the number one fan of your very beautiful daughter. I was like, wow, I didn't know that, that was the full story. So let's start with a transition story first, and then let's go to your professional life because
Sure.
both are beautiful. On the transitioning story, you're, you're fortunate to to be supported by a very loving mother, to be able to have that someone in your life who would hold your hand, support you, and tell you that I'm accepting you. She's taking part of, that transitioning journey and becoming your cheerleader. I think at this day and age, even if everything is so modern, is sometimes still, unheard of. And there are a lot of, trans folks who unfortunately are not experiencing that level of support. First question is, if you're going to turn back time, would you be willing to undergo the same situation and journey again, knowing that the end of it would be the same end that you would have right now? And what were your learnings as you were going through the process that I know is so difficult to connect the dots for once, you were there and where you are now?
Oh, if you'd asked me early in my transition if I would have done it all again, I don't know if I would have had the same answer as I do now. But uh, going through that transition process, even the challenges, even having, I say my mother was supportive. I didn't always have the full support of my whole family. I did have an aunt and uncle that didn't want it around their kids, and it's really shaped who I am today. It has helped build empathy for folks, and it's really shown me how much I value my family and my support structure, and not take them for granted in any way, shape, or form. So I would say yes, I would go through it all again, even the challenges, because it has helped me be who I am today. Although it's hard to see that in the moment when you're going through it.
Yeah. So, what would be, your suggestion or your thoughts for those people who are probably in that situation right now that you were in like 20 years ago, probably, or 15 years ago? What are those small pieces of words of wisdom from Trevor that you can share with them?
Sure. First of all, keep yourself safe, and that's emotional safety, and know your boundaries. Uh, Find your support network. Find your chosen family if you can't connect to your birth family. We are out here for you. There are resources. There are people who love you and who support you. And I know it can't always be easy to find them, especially when you are in those dark places. But there are people here for you, and reach out to them.
Hmm. That's great advice. Let's now talk about the professional side of things. I didn't realize that was also an epic journey. I didn't
Oh my
realize
goodness.
you jump from one job to another before getting into this amazing role that you're holding on right now, that you're thriving at as well as a supplier diversity manager for Boston Scientific. So for folks who are probably not familiar with the execution of DIB, in the workplace, what does your day to day look like? In your role right now, what does that entail, and what do you add value to on your day to day basis?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when most people think of diversity in the workplace, they think of workforce. They're thinking that HR function that looks at who do we have in leadership roles, who do we have on our staff, where are our next generation of diverse leaders coming from, are we recruiting in spaces that are diverse? Supplier diversity works on another side of the business. We work on the operations side, on the procurement side, and what my role is, it's there's a couple pieces to it. One is certainly compliance. We, as Boston Scientific, as a federal contractor, we have to maintain compliance with the federal regulations and guidelines that are put forth. And the other piece is it's a business strategy to include small and diverse businesses. When we go out and we interact with businesses that are owned by women, by minorities, by people who are disabled, by people who are LGBTQ, we're interacting with businesses that have a different level of innovation, that have a different agile ability to connect with the products that we're trying to build, and it's really I love this job because it is like building 10 puzzles at once and not knowing what any of the pictures look like. Um, I have to know a little bit about everything that happens in the company. I have to know about all the different categories that we have, whether it's sales and marketing, IT, professional services, legal services, maintenance, repair, and operations, facilities. I have to have my my hands on everything that's happening to know what type of vendor to connect them with, what type of supplier that they're going to be looking for. So my day to day is a lot of communication. It's a lot of relationship building. In the intro, you call me a trusted advisor, and that's really something that I've focused heavily on. Is being that trusted advisor so people understand if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. If I have a supplier that is recommended that you're listening to say this is a valid supplier to work with. So I work in partnership with Small Business Association to make sure that we're compliant with the small business search features. But I also work with several different national group organizations that certify diverse vendors. So I work with the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce. I work with the National Minority Supplier Development Council, National Veteran Business Development Council. There's your NVBDC. U.S. Pan Asian American Chamber of Commerce, the National Native American Supplier Council, U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Diversity Alliance for Science. So all of these organizations are out there aggregating suppliers that are of their demographic across a variety of services and goods. It's my job to then filter through to meet with those suppliers to help connect them to the internal stakeholders that are going to use their goods or services to advance our products. So it's matchmaking, it's networking, it's compliance, it's oftentimes keeping a relationship open and active for anywhere from 3 to 5 years during a contract cycle to make sure that when the time comes, that vendor supplier is ready to bid on the work that is open to them. It's a lot of travel. It's a lot of travel to conferences. It is taking advantage of speaking opportunities when I can to share what Boston Scientific does and how I help. And a big part of that is also development of these vendors. There are mentorship opportunities with many of these organizations that take advantage of that. We work with a vendor that might not be quite ready for an opportunity with a large biotech firm, but has just a few things that they need to tweak to get there. We work with vendors who are brand new, who are just getting off the ground and starting, who are looking to say, hey, I want to sell my product to a life science company. How do I do this? So it's a little bit of coaching, it's a little bit of mentoring, it's a little bit of showmanship, it's a little bit of compliance, and that's one of the reasons I love it. My ADHD brain just gets into all the little nooks and crannies, and eventually something beautiful happens. I was told by someone a few years ago that as a diversity professional, I'm a paid irritant. Which I embrace that fully. Some people are like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe they said that to you," but in my point of view, an irritant is the grain of sand in an oyster that turns into a pearl. And what I am looking for are those pearls, those vendors who are going to take us to the next level, who are going to help us launch our products faster and help our patients. So that's what I do. I'm a paid irritant.
What a dream job
It
being
really is.
written, Trevor. Let's cut that into beautiful bite-sized pieces because now understanding your role, yeah, like literally, you're wearing tons of hats. Like, you need to know first the concept, the philosophy, and the application, and what diversity looks like across the entire gamut of an organization and the suppliers that you'll be matching to every need that your company would have. And then second would be coaching them when it comes to what's correct, what needs to be addressed, and what that success looks like at the end of the day. And then finally, also finding ways to coach or develop those suppliers or companies who would have those future opportunities. So that's like literally hardcore as well. A lot of it lies on your expertise, your judgment, and your recommendations. But knowing now, for example, when it comes to understanding what the end goal is, because, diversity is relatively speaking a newer concept. I mean, it's not been here for the last 50 years, for example. And to your point, you're being considered as a paid irritant because for folks who are not embracing diversity before, for them, it's like, oh, it's just a cause of trouble. It prolongs the process. We've been doing this before. It's tried and tested. Why do we need to change it? So first question there is, what is the value of having a supplier diversity manager to be a paid irritant? What value would you give your company and then the suppliers that you're also assessing and coaching? What's the end game like for you to be able to prove that an oyster will really come out of it after making them work hard for it?
Absolutely. There's a few pieces to that. One is supplier diversity is a good business strategy. There's a solid return on investment for a company that invests in a supplier diversity program, and part of that is pricing. Keeping pricing honest with your suppliers. A lot of times there's a misconception that diverse businesses are small businesses. They're not all small businesses. There are some very large diverse owned businesses out there. And there's also a misconception that diverse business can't be competitive pricing wise, which is not true. We see a good number of small vendors that are able to be more agile. Oftentimes, they've invested very wisely and don't have the overhead that a large business may have. So they might not be paying for office space on Wall Street. Because they're happy to work virtually, so they don't have that extra cost. They're not building that into the cost that they're passing along to one of their clients. They also are agile and innovative in their thinking. They approach things differently than some of your more traditional large businesses. And that innovation is such a key to developing products and keeping ahead of our competitors. When we see that, I'm going to highlight an incredible vendor that I've seen now a few years in a row. Marcel Haywood is his name, and he owns a company called Encompass 360, and he has revolutionized the janitorial world. And it is absolutely amazing. You'd think that how much innovation can there really be in that janitorial space? His company has come up with a product that turns tap water into an agent that kills viruses and bacteria in under 5 seconds on surfaces. So they've basically made a supply chain disruption proof solution to cleaning your facilities. And we haven't seen that from some of our other vendors. So it's incredible to see the innovation that comes out of people who are challenged to think differently. We know that when our workforce mirrors our patient base, solutions are better. Well, when our suppliers mirror our workforce and mirror our patient base, solutions are going to be better. We're going to more accurately capture patient needs and our workforce needs if we have eyes from all communities on the work.
That is great. It's definitely a positive disruption, I would have to say, because the examples that you've provided, that beautiful case study is like if they will not abide by the requirements of being diverse, so therefore the innovative solution probably would not have resulted to the offering that they have. And I think it pushes boundaries for people to think better, for people to really think of providing real solutions that really add value, that propels us to continuously develop and for us to be able to provide better solutions, whether it's a workplace, the business, or the humanity in totality in general, which I think is really, a great example where we're not just simply checking off the box of the diversity buzzword just to check it off, but really finding valuable results and meaningful impact that will come out of it. Again, easier said than done, I would have to say. I'm sure that there are also a lot of challenging parts to your role. What are those challenges, and how do you address those to make your job really very fulfilling still at the end of the day?
Absolutely, that's a great question. There are some challenges, and a lot of it centers around uh, getting vendors into the system. You oftentimes have incumbent vendors who have been doing the work for a very long time that do it well, and there's not always a lot of incentive to disrupt that. So you have to have something that gives a vendor an edge, whether it's pricing, whether it's quality. There has to be something that is enticing enough for the incumbent vendor to be overturned. So that can be a challenge. Sometimes it's speed of the request for proposal. So getting someone up to speed and into your system and ready to go can be a unique challenge. Also, rationalization of supplier bases. When you look at large companies, multinational companies, a lot of times you're looking for suppliers that can be leveraged across several different countries, and that's not always the case with our supplier diversity programs. It's a US-based program currently. We do hope to go global soon, but not this year. So it can be a challenge to combat that rationalization of shrinking the number of suppliers with we want you to add all these diverse suppliers. And the hardest part for me is working with a supplier and having to tell them no. It tears me up. I hate having to say no, and it's taken me a few years in this role to really understand that a fast no is much more of a mercy than a long maybe. Because the vendor is spending their time and resources to reach out, to contact, to follow up. And if there's never going to be an opportunity for them, that's wasted resources. And a lot of the small and diverse vendors can't afford to be wasting resources. Access to capital is a big issue with small and diverse vendors, and we want to make sure that they're spending their money wisely. So it is something that I've had to embrace. It's not something I like to do, but it is something that I have to do. It's going to be a no.
It's like a combination of tough love, and really understanding that you're doing your job. You have a you have a goal, you have a value that you're supposed to to fulfill, and that's the reason why sometimes a no is really a hard no.
Yes.
Um, as you progress when it comes to maturing in that kind of approach in terms of management, as well as in terms of coaching or mentoring, for sure there are like a lot of people who are approaching you asking for your advice, tools, tips, tricks to really succeed in this field, right? What's your management and mentoring style and or coaching style like, and how do you use that to make sure that you become effective and you see success from those people that are within your scope and within your circle?
I see a lot of my responsibility as a mentor and managing in these situations as more of a facilitator. I I don't know everything, but I probably know someone who knows something really in depth about what you're looking for. So my style is to connect subject matter experts to the person asking the question, and then make sure that they are able to digest that information to really put that into use and to follow up with those questions about all right, how did you absorb that feedback? What did you do with that information? How have you incorporated that into your business or your work style? So I really see myself somewhere between a facilitator and a card catalog.
I love your metaphors, Trevor. I would have to say, I'm really loving it. And also at the same time, it's easier to understand, especially for folks who are not really very technical, probably, especially when it comes to the field of business or in this particular case, supplier diversity management, which I think how you apply your interest, your personal background, and how you've learned things, again, going back to your transition journey, is really positively impacting how you're embracing that and applying that in the workplace and the people who are seeking support from you. So let's get into that right now, especially going outside of your 9 to 5, because I know that you are also regularly volunteering in a lot of nonprofits that are also very much in line with your advocacy and the causes that you support, specifically LGBTQ plus, inclusivity, and other organizations that really amplify equality and pushes forward when it comes to the philosophies or the important aspects of freedom when it comes to the generation today. Can you tell us more about all these nonprofits or these volunteer programs that you are supporting?
Sure. As you said, a lot of them are LGBT specific. For 4 years, served on the board of directors at Fenway Community Health with several of their committees, and really that was giving back. Fenway, I've been a patient there for oh, close to 2 decades now, and we wouldn't have my daughter if it hadn't been for the Fenway program. So it was really important for me to give back to them as I was able to. And other than that, Speak Out Boston is near and dear to my heart. I attribute a lot of my success in my career to that foundation of being comfortable speaking that Speak Out gave me, and I am looking forward to doing more with Speak Out, which hopefully will happen. I am hoping to join the board of Speak Out, so I'm looking forward to that. I also realized when I moved to Grafton that there really wasn't an LGBT community a visible LGBT community in the town of Grafton. So I did start to gather on Facebook the LGBT community of Grafton, which has now grown into the Grafton Pride organization. And we held our first Pride Festival a couple of years ago. The year before that, we held what was supposed to be just a community picnic. We were expecting about 8 families, and 100 people showed up. So it's nice to see that community starting to grow and change. I served on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for the curling club that I belong to, and that was a good experience trying to bring more diversity to the sport of curling. I volunteer where I can. I wish I was. If people ask me what I want to be when I grow up, I want to be a philanthropist so I can just donate my time and money to all these causes. And someday maybe I'll win Powerball and that can happen. But in the meantime, I donate the time that I have and the money where I can. And it is really focused on bringing LGBT rights to the forefront, especially trans rights, especially where we're seeing so much misinformation spread right now and so much bigotry and hatred, and just trying to challenge that across the country is really important this year.
Those are really profound volunteer programs that you support, and I really appreciate how you carve out time to really support all these very important causes. I know that you've been very busy when it comes to your professional career, especially when it comes to your travel season. But knowing you and how you split your time across all of these organizations and volunteer programs that you support is just very inspiring and really very motivating. I think especially for those people who are viewing and hearing this right now, we're in, coming from that journey, being successful in your professional career and finding ways to give back and still find ways to, enjoy the family that you have right now. I know it's very challenging when it comes to juggling all these multiple roles, aside from the role that you have in your work, the other roles that you have in your nonprofits and also in your family life. How do you manage that? As a family man, especially when it comes to this generation we're in, the challenge of perfectionism as parents is always there. The lack of time, the lack of resources, all those things that are clouding this generation. Can you give us examples in terms of how you manage your time, and what would be your tips and tricks for the younger parents so that they can emulate those?
Well, I don't know if I do it well. I hope I do. It's not easy. And the weeks that I'm gone, I try to make sure that I'm FaceTiming at least once a day to if she'll get on camera. She sometimes, as young children are wont to do, doesn't want to be on camera, doesn't want to be seen. My wife sends me pictures when I'm traveling for sure. I wouldn't be able to do any of this without her support and everything she does. And with the sake of being able, both of us, to work remotely when we can, when we need to. It's not easy. I don't know how anyone that's isolated does this. We're very lucky to have both sets of parents nearby. If anything really came to a pinch, we can rely on our family, and I know that is a very lucky piece for us. You don't have time, you make time, and that's the important thing. If I need to do something, if my family needs to do something, they come first, always. And if I need to cancel a trip or skip a meeting, that's what's going to happen. My family will come first.
That is great advice. Like, making time at the end of the day is how we can navigate this journey where we're all in, and also at the same time find ways so that we can maximize the gifts, the talents, and the passion points that we have, which is very, very evident when it comes to how you're living your life and your day to day. Going back, Trevor, to your LGBTQ plus advocacies, and finding ways to volunteer for a lot of these programs, I have noticed that there are, some communities where, or even offices or even organizations that are very much interested to supporting or becoming an ally for the LGBTQ plus community, especially with with what's happening, in the country right now or in the world. What if they don't have the right resources? They don't know where to go. They don't have ERGs in their organizations. What would be your suggestion so that they can at least find ways where to go, find the right information, and create ways in their own little ways to be part of the solution?
Those are great questions, and that's not an easy thing if you don't have a foot on the ground already. But there are some wonderful organizations out there to help. If you're a company looking for resources, the HRC Human Rights Campaign has some good resources. Out and Equal has some great resources. PFLAG has some great resources on Ally 101. There are some really good organizations out there that can give you a start with that information. With my company, I think when they started, they brought in PFLAG, and PFLAG provided an Ally 101 guide and a Trans Ally 101 guide for us, and that was really the beginning of the really awakening of LGBT employees in the company. We had the ERG for a while, but it was not quite at the forefront as much as it is now. So looking to those well-established organizations is a great place to start. Mass Trans Political Coalition, at very least, have Speak Out come in and do a presentation for your employees. With Pride Month coming up in June and History Month in October, there's a lot of opportunity for hearing those LGBT stories and showing your employees that you are valued in this space. I think it's a really interesting dynamic when you have companies that want to do the right thing, but don't have employees who are out and comfortable in that space yet. You can have companies trying to put all the best resources in place, but until someone is actually trying to interact with those resources, maybe they don't realize that they're not quite the right fit. For example, with reproductive benefits resources, if you take an off-the-shelf policy for family planning, you might not realize that that policy is written in a way that discriminates financially against single women and LGBT couples. And sometimes it just takes someone with those eyes to look at it and say, hey, we know you didn't do this out of malice, but this policy is not equal. When it comes to building facilities and bathrooms, do you have a neutral facility in the same block as the men's and women's rooms, or do you have to have someone escort you through security to get to that facility? It's things like that. Is how is your building built? How are your policies structured? If you're not sure if you have an employee that can provide that feedback, or you don't want to put that emotional burden on your employees, there are some wonderful consultants out there that can help with that as well. I've done a bit of it myself. Rex Wild and anyone from the NGLCC, Ashley Brundridge, Gabrielle Claiborne. There are so many wonderful resources out there that can look at those policies and say, you might want to shift this, you might want to change that, adapt to your neutral language a bit here. So there's a lot that can be done, and it just takes one person to start and say, hey, we want to start, and just pick a place and start.
That is a very helpful, pieces of advice and great, resources. I'll definitely put those in the show notes so folks will be able to literally look at them and probably, begin the conversation, especially when it comes to their organization. To your point on those specific cases wherein, this sounds so simple, but then again, it's not being considered, which, brings me to my next question. It may sound so simple, but probably it's neglected right now. Why does it matter for a workplace to be LGBTQ plus inclusive? I mean, it's always been a buzzword. It's always been a term that people talk about, especially during Pride Month. Let's all be allies. And then after Pride Month, it will all die down. But, hearing it directly from you who had a lot of those experiences, why is it important for a workplace to be LGBTQ plus inclusive?
It matters to your bottom line, frankly. Workplaces that have LGBT inclusion policies and research um, component, R&D component to your business, there is a high correlation to your revenue, to your productivity of your workers. There have been studies done that show, I wish I could find it off the top of my head. I'll have to find the resources and send them so you can link them to the show notes. But I think it was like a 2.4% increase in productivity in your workforce by having an inclusive workforce. I very much taken along the same lines of when you do something that helps one group, you're actually uplifting all groups. And a great example of that is when they built the ramps into sidewalks to help people with wheelchairs. It also helped people who were pushing shopping carts, pushing strollers, kids on like little bicycles and scooters. It was meant for one part of the population, but it uplifted the whole population.
That is great. Yes. It's not us, the minority group, asking for something special for us, but it's the whole piece of equality and equity that will benefit everyone, which I think is a great way to position it, Trevor. I fully appreciate and agree with that. And I hope that, a lot of organizations, whether it be for profit, nonprofit, or, institutions or even schools, will be able to embrace that and understand, what you just said there. On the lighter side of things, Trevor, because a lot of people who are listening in this podcast are younger folks, those who are starting their careers, finding their way through, they creating the next phases of their lives. So if I'm gonna ask Trevor to talk to the 21-year-old Trevor, what would you tell that younger version of Trevor when he was 21?
Oh, where to start? I think I can write a whole book about this one. First, stop hiding who you are. You're going to be much happier much sooner if you are honest with yourself, so you can be honest with other people. The other part around the career side of things is I used to just work like crazy, thinking that it would get me ahead, and I always thought my work would speak for myself. And work does speak for itself to a point, but at some point you need to showcase that work. So early in your career, find two people, find a mentor and find a champion. A mentor will speak with you, a champion will speak for you.
That is beautiful. I hope everyone heard that, and I hope everyone would apply that, because those are gold nuggets that I think all of them will be benefiting from. So last question, Trevor. I hate to cut this, but after I stop record, we'll continue the conversation. The final question that I would ask all my guests would be, what does a meaningful life mean to you?
Oh, that is a deep question. A meaningful life is a life fulfilled, and I have that. I look at my daughter and she looks at me and she laughs, and my heart is just full, and I don't want for anything when that happens. It's absolutely incredible. I am very privileged in my life to have an amazing family, to have an amazing job that I love, that pays the bills, to have opportunities that I have that I never thought I would, and now the opportunity to share that and to pass it on to the next generation coming up, to the next people that are looking for that next step. That's all part of a meaningful life, and being able to share that, it's just incredible.
I love how you've used the word privileged, because when you started your journey, it was the complete opposite. It's like the 180-degree turn that you have experienced, which I hope that people who are listening who might be in a dark place would be able to pick up from in this conversation. Wherein there is a rainbow. No matter how cliche sounding it is, but there definitely is a silver lining and a rainbow towards the end of everything that we are all experiencing. So with that, Trevor, I want to give you the floor to let folks know how they can reach out to you, because with everything that they've heard today, I'm sure that they have a lot of questions. They want to consult you. They want to hear from you. So, what would be the best way to reach you? Feel free to let the folks know.
Sure. A few ways to reach me. First, find me on LinkedIn, Trevor Boylston. Second, if you are a supplier out there looking to engage with Supplier Diversity Program, Supplier Diversity at bsci.com. That's B as in Boston, sci.com. And last, if you want to connect on LGBT issues, connect at trevorboylston.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Trevor. Really appreciate your time today and look forward to more chats, not necessarily on podcast, but in person. Thanks,
Absolutely.
Trevor.
Thank you, Joseph.